Support for this episode of YXC Underground comes from Rob Romvey and his team at Romvey Wealth Management Group of RBC Dominion Securities in North Battleford. If you are looking for someone to manage and invest your money, Rob Romvey is the person to see.
I don't think I ever expected to be in this good of a headspace after losing my daughter, like ever again. But like doing the work that I do just it heals my heart a little bit more every time. Like I think we're really fortunate.
Hello, I'm Eric Anderson. The voice you just heard belongs to Jasmine and Herchak. Jasmine and Bri Koop are the co-founders of the Empty Arms organization, and both are the featured guests in Season 5, Episode 5 of YXC Underground. The death of a child is devastating to families, no matter their age. But when it comes to supporting individuals and families who have experienced the loss of a child during pregnancy or at a very young age, there are very few supports often available. In Saskatoon, we are lucky to have Empty Arms, a non-profit organization helping families and individuals grieve the loss of young children and creating a supportive community for those who have experienced such a powerful loss. Jasmine Herchak and Bri Koop started Empty Arms in 2014, and they share why this work is so meaningful to them in this episode of YXC Underground. Last year, I received an email from my friend Sarah Irons. I've known Sarah for years and was excited to hear from her. The email was a pitch for the podcast, and it read, "As you may or may not know, Eric, in 2018, my partner and I received the devastating news that our baby, I was 23 weeks pregnant, had medical conditions that were not conducive to life. As we coped with the news and next steps, we were pointed in the direction of Empty Arms. They are an amazing perinatal loss support group and do the difficult work of guiding families through the loss and grief of their babies. They made our experience the best it could be, creating space for us to make memories with our son and spend time with him before we had to say goodbye. It's truly an amazing organization, and they deserve their story to be told." I'm grateful for Sarah for sending this email. I had never heard of Empty Arms before, but it was clear from Sarah's email the impact the organization had had on her family in such a difficult time. I reached out to Sarah and her partner Dax to let them know I was going to feature Empty Arms on the podcast and that they would be more than welcome to contribute to the episode in whatever way they wanted. Sarah and Dax invited me to their home here in Saskatoon on a cold December weekend to tell me the story of their son Everett and the role Empty Arms played in helping them prepare for his birth and to grieve his passing. Here are Dax and Sarah explaining how their relationship with Empty Arms, and specifically Jasmine, began. It's about a 6-minute clip, and I think it will give you a sense of all the little things Empty Arms does that add up to something really meaningful.
I was the one who made the call to Empty Arms. Because at that point, like we didn't have that much information about like what was going to happen and what we were going to do once we went into the hospital. Like aside from that we were going to induce labor, but they sort of walked us through it. About what would happen. Jasmine was very clear of that we could call her throughout the process. When Everett was eventually born, it was at 3:00 in the morning, and 2:54, and I called her almost immediately afterwards. It was like she just instantly became this point of contact. I called my parents and I called her, and they told us like that they would come in. They brought us a kit. They suggested things that we should pack. She asked if we had things like blankets or stuffed animals ready and stuff like that, and said, "Okay, well, I want you to take some of that stuff in with you, so that you'll have it." Yeah, they said, "Do you want? We can have a photographer come in," and we initially said no to that. but then eventually changed our minds. Although at that point, yeah, they didn't have anybody available, but it's fine. Like, I mean, they said, well, you know, this is something you're probably going to want, and that is something we did decide later. Yeah, overall, it was nice to have things to do, next steps, and sort of an idea of what was going to happen. And then, yeah, eventually, it was very early in the morning when Jasmine came. I mean, we'd had a few hours. She brought us a box full of all kinds of things that we might want forever. She brought the stuffed animals. We sort of went through a few rituals with him that kind of helped us, I think, just, even though he wasn't there in his body, it just helped us let him know how loved he was and how much we'd wanted him. I mean, he was born with perfect little hands and feet and a perfect little face, and it was so hard to believe that, you know, it wasn't going to happen. And then, so we went through things like, we read him a story, we changed his diaper, we put him in pajamas, he had, you know, we held him, he was in a nice little hat. I believe Empty Arms has raised money over the years that they actually buy chillers. Yeah, they're called cuddle cots. So that he was physically in good condition throughout the process. We had a few people close to us who came in and had the chance to hold him and see him. And yeah, so you just, you know, you don't have to go through that sort of misery alone. Yeah, we did eventually have photos and stuff. One of the most special things was Jasmine actually suggested, here, why don't you, we gave him a bath, she brought in a whole kit of essential oils in different scents, and she said, pick one that you don't have any other association with. Pick one. Which was hard, because we always
have a lot.
But so she said, okay, I want you to go through these things, and I want you to like pick something that you don't have any other sense memory for. And then that's what we added to the bathwater as we cleaned him and changed him into the pajamas that he would be in when we finally left the hospital, and that kind of thing. And then, you know, we dried him with the towel, and so, you know, and then now we have all those things preserved in a Ziploc bag, and you can, you know, when you open that bag, which we have done on his birthday, you know, that stuff, remembering going through that ritual is a very positive memory for us. Like, you're going through a miserable time, but knowing that you love that baby as best you could in the time that you had, and that you went through that stuff is some small comfort in that, like, in that dark spot. Yeah.
Thank you, Dax.
We got to weigh him and do his measurements and all the things that you would do, or that you do when you have a baby full term. And they brought things that were like his size, like this was his stuffed rabbit that they brought in. They let you take their handprints and footprints, so we have them on our wall, the ink ones, and then in our little memory corner we have his other stuffed animal with his hands and footprints in, it's kind of clay. It looks like clay, but it's not really. Yeah, it's like a polymer. But they supplied all of those things. Like, we didn't have to think of any of these things. They supplied clothes that were the right size, because nobody expects to have a baby that small. He was just over a pound, so very, very tiny. So no one expects to have to clothe a baby that small or anything like that. So they made it that we had all these things available to us.
My sincere thanks to Sarah and Dax for sharing their story and for giving us a sense of the many ways Empty Arms helps people and families. The two people who started Empty Arms in 2015 are Jasmine Herchak and Bri Koop. To say they are caring and kind people would be a vast understatement. As you will hear in our conversation, which took place at the Good Earth Coffee Shop in the Jim Pattison Children's Hospital, Bri and Jasmine put their hearts and souls, their time and wallets into this organization, and their work has helped hundreds of people like Sarah and Dax. In the first part of our conversation, we talk about the reasons why they started Empty Arms and how they connect with families and individuals in need of their help. We also talk about the importance of empathy and trust and its lasting benefits. I started our conversation by asking Bri how she and Jasmine feel when they come into the Children's Hospital to meet a family or individual who needs their support.
So I think what you're touching on is actually really sort of foundational to the work that we do, because I think, and I'm making an assumption here, but I'm assuming you've never lost a baby.
No, and like my wife and I, we don't have kids at all, and so I appreciate you sort of like, I could see you making eye contact with me, like, Eric, I know what you're trying to say. You can just come out and say it. I appreciate that, because this is a world, a community, an experience that is just so foreign to me. So, and yet, like you're saying, that you're here lots, aren't you?
Yeah, so that's exactly it, right? Is that it's such a foreign concept, even to me, when it happened to me the first time. So because I've lost two babies, and I already had an almost 2-year-old, and I had plenty of friends with kids, of all different ages, but I had never heard of this happening to anybody, and I really thought that I was like the only one, because it just isn't something that was talked about at all, and so that was something that I think, and I don't want to speak for Jasmine, but I think something that we both felt was the loneliness of going through this experience without any kind of formal support, formal or informal.
I was going to wait till maybe later in the conversation to ask how all this started, but I think that's a nice segue into that, like how, Jasmine, we were talking just before in terms of when you started with the nonprofit, like how did all this begin?
Well, in 2013, my husband and I lost our youngest, Jael, and we didn't have the best hospital experience. It was pretty rough. And after the fact, I really was drawn to the idea of helping out other families. And then I came across a course for birth and bereavement doula. So I just knew I had to take it. So I took it. And then I thought, well, how can we offer this to people without, charging them money? And so the idea of a nonprofit. And then I connected with Bri. And we just kind of rolled with it.
But it's one thing, like you said, you go through, a very painful and traumatizing experience. But then not everyone would say, I want to take that experience and do something good with it and help others. What was it within yourself that made you think I want to go down this route and start Empty Arms?
That's a good question. I don't really know.
Internal response.
I have a bit of an obsessive personality, so I kind of got fixated. And I just wanted to make the experience better for other families, so yeah.
And for me, and again, I can't speak for Jasmine, but when I met her and she was telling me about this initiative that she was wanting to do and all of these amazing ideas, I was just like, yeah, like I had been searching for ways to give my son's life meaning. And so I had been doing fundraisers actually for the Children's Hospital. It wasn't called Jim Pattison at the time, but just independently, because I wanted to, like, I had all this energy that I would have been pouring into a child that I was raising, but I wasn't. So I was looking for other ways to, like, you know, express that love for him. And because parenthood is really, like, it's a lot of work, right? And so, yeah, I just had all this energy. And so, and not everybody is the same way with grief. Like, everybody grieves differently, but I think a lot of parents do feel like they want an outlet for all of that, like, love and grief and everything.
When you first started this, and obviously, Bri, you joined early on. Like, what was the reaction from, like, even people like within your social circles, like when you were starting this? What was that like? You're smiling a bit.
Well, no, it's because people don't quite know how to take it. Yeah, like, it's kind of a strange concept when you first bring it up. You know, not something you would talk about, you know, or think about doing, you know, like, before you lose a baby, you don't think, you know, let's make memories with a baby that's passed. That just, yeah, doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Yeah, so a lot of people were like, oh, really? This is what you want to do?
Did that in any way, like, did that frustrate you, or, like, make it, no?
No, I was pretty set in what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I think, too, like we said earlier, when you haven't experienced it, because both Jasmine and I hadn't experienced it at one point, right? And so I probably would have felt similarly if someone else had brought the idea to me before I had held my dying son, you know? Like, I don't think I know, because I had my only experience with baby loss was an acquaintance whose baby was stillborn, and she had posted a picture of his feet on social media, and there was all sorts of talk in our workplace about, you know, not nice words. And I remember not voicing any opinions, because I just thought it was something that shouldn't even be talked about, let alone shared on social media, you know. And so it was, but I remember agreeing with the thing, like, in my mind, agreeing with the things that they were saying about, you know, like, why would you want to take a picture of a dead baby, let alone share those pictures? And now that's what I do.
It's yeah, like, it saddens me to hear that there was people, like, saying not nice things about that.
And it's not that they were saying bad things about the baby or the family, but it was judging the choices that they had made, you know? Like, why would you share that? Like, that's private, right? But it's so funny because, you know, if you were to lose a parent or a spouse, people wouldn't say, you know, oh, I don't want to talk about that. That's your own private grief, right? They would send their condolences and they would offer to help in any way that they could. But when it's a baby that dies, it's the sadness is so great that people just get uncomfortable and they just don't even know how to wrap their brains around it. And I think that it's a self-defense mechanism, right? That they don't want to understand where you're coming from because it's too painful.
That makes sense. And it reminds me of when I spoke with Sarah and Dax last month. That was something that Sarah brought up too, was that we're very comfortable in terms of, like you said, like posting online or talking about, you know, the loss of a parent or a grandparent. And yet this, what you do, it's so different.
Yeah, it is different. And again, like, I can't think of any other reason why it would be different. Well, that's not entirely true. The only other reason I can think of, honestly, other than we don't want to try to imagine how painful it is that, you know, birth historically has been a woman's world, and women's issues haven't always been at the forefront of society, right? So, I mean, historically, men weren't even present for the birth of their child. So if that child was, you know, not alive, they wouldn't have ever even seen that child, and it's like it didn't exist. So why would they encourage conversations about a child that didn't exist to them.
Or even the grieving process.
Right. Yeah, and of course then it's compounded with the whole men can't grieve and men can't be sad, right? So why would they grieve something that they never saw, they never held, and to even like allow themselves to feel a little bit of that sadness, you just open the floodgates, right? So it was very much just shove it down.
That's so. It's interesting how there's layers to it, and it goes back for That's very interesting. May I ask you both some nuts and bolts questions in terms of how you were able to connect with families who have lost a child? This is a really big question, Jasmine, but how does it work? Like how do you make the connections with families?
We're very fortunate to be at the place we're at now. The hospital, the doctors and the nurses both tell families about us. So we'll often, with the family's permission, we'll get a call from their nurse, telling them about us and saying they want our services, and we connect that way. Once in a while, we'll hear from a family that just hears from us about us through social media or something like that, but usually it's from the doctors and nurses.
What are the first conversations like with a family? Like once they make the call to you guys, like what are those first conversations like?
Gentle. We tell them how sorry we are for the fact that they're going through this and stuff. We get some details as we converse with them, and kind of like with my job, I just kind of try and build a connection with them, because I'll be connected with them if we talk to them before birth. I'll be connected with them then in the hospital and then for years to come. So, yeah.
Well, Bri, what are the first conversations like for you when you're connecting with a family?
Yeah, so primarily I come in with the role of photographer, but occasionally, especially during the pandemic when, if we had our companions were symptomatic with any symptoms, then I was sort of playing both roles, just because I'd seen it done enough. And so it's the same thing. It's really just about building trust in the beginning, giving them someone that they know understands what they're going through, even though of course all of the details will be individual, but just someone who has been where they are. And I think one of the biggest things, and of course like Jasmine said, it doesn't just all happen in one conversation or even a handful of conversations, but one of the biggest things for me is, it sounds cliche, but sort of giving them hope that it's not always going to be as hard as it is in those initial moments, like just letting them know that there's going to be a roller coaster of emotions, but that's really, they're in the hardest moments. And a lot of families will say to me, like, you seem okay, like you've had this happen to you, but you seem okay. Like, how did you keep going on, right? And so I think just seeing that there's other, like, so many of our volunteers and staff with Empty Arms have also experienced loss. And I think it's comforting to see that life doesn't end. Your life doesn't end when your baby's life does, because it really feels like it.
Yeah.
You mentioned the word trust, and when both of you were answering that question, what came to mind for me was empathy, and you obviously have it in spades because you have been in that situation before, and that just must be, like, I'm guessing, but it must be on some level comforting for the families that you're working with to know that they are now in contact with and forming a relationship with two people and with volunteers as well who have been in their shoes like that. Does that help on the trust front?
I think so. Yeah, it definitely does. And Yeah.
Yeah, I think often, and again, every individual and family is different, but I think oftentimes, we can say the same thing as like one of their medical providers, but not medically, but like, sorry for your loss type thing. And I think when it's coming from someone who understands, it just has different weight to it, because they really, like, just countless times they've just looked up at us and said, like, you understand, and yeah, it's that loneliness that Jasmine and I both felt when we lost our babies, that most of our families don't have to experience, because apart from our organization, like on the back end, we have all of the other families that, network together now. So
I do want to get to that. No. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I do want to get to that. But I'm so curious. So after you have those first few conversations and a relationship is forming, what are the supports that you offer? Because I saw a couple of your colleagues as they were approaching the elevator. They've got big bags. They're full of things. And I know Sarah and Dax touched on a couple of things that you were provided to them. But can you explain to listeners like what it is, like tangibly that maybe you provide?
Well, when we come in, like the companions will help them make memories, like giving baby a bath, doing prints and impressions of their hands and feet. We have a box of mementos that we give to the families with things like a stuffed bunny, which is because of Bri.
Ooh, tell me about the stuffed bunny.
Oh, so with all of my babies, when we found out we were pregnant, we didn't, I didn't really didn't find out with our first two what we were having in terms of like boy or girl. So when we first heard the heartbeat or had an ultrasound, I would go and just buy a stuffed bunny, like one of those Jellycat bunnies, just as like, I don't know, because it felt real then, right? In the first few weeks, it's like, yeah, you're nauseous and stuff, but you've never heard them or seen them. And so it felt real at that moment. And so I wanted to like have something. And so that's what I did, was I bought those stuffed bunnies. And so when we found out that our son would die after he was born, all we had for him was his bunny. So we took it with us to the hospital when we met him and said goodbye. And so, we have pictures of him with his bunny, and now his siblings, like, it's just in tatters because it's so loved, and they know that, it's their Marlowe bunny. So
Thank you for sharing that story. Okay, so the stuffed bunny is part of it.
Right. And then things like books for mom and dad. There's a book they can read to baby, a necklace for mom, a wristband for dad, flower seeds, just some special things. Like, we feel like just because their baby's gone doesn't mean they shouldn't be loved on and, receive things. So, yeah.
I guess every family is different, but like our families a bit overwhelmed when they receive all of this from you guys?
Some are. I think some are comforted because, they feel like their situation is valid, right? Like I think a lot of families are comforted. Yeah, of course there's some overwhelm there, for sure. Yeah. It's an overwhelming experience altogether.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. It's so interesting though that you just said that it makes them feel that what they're going through is valid. Like, oh, that makes me feel sad.
It's really hard because when you leave the hospital, you leave your baby here, right? And it can feel like you're walking out with empty arms, right? And so having something, it almost feels like a really horrific dream. Like, I remember walking through RUH, like the lobby, and all these people, it was like a scene from a movie where everything was just kind of like blurry and happening around me, but it was like did this even just happen? Because I walked in pregnant and I walked out with no baby, and it was just like, what just happened? And I woke up like every day for weeks thinking this must have just been a bad dream, and I would have to like remind myself that it happened, especially because the people in your life, you know, normally when when you have a substantial loss, you know, there's other people around you that you're sharing that grief with, like your parents or your siblings or friends or coworkers even, right? But with the loss of a child, it can be very isolating, even just in the fact that it feels like you're the only one going through that grief, even within your family. So having like those tangible reminders, it's like, okay, this happened, I'm not crazy. And yeah.
You are listening to episode 5, season 5 of YXE Underground. My name is Eric Anderson, and our featured guests are Jasmin, Herchak, and Bri Koop from Empty Arms. Listen to YXE Underground wherever you find your favorite podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or the website yxeunderground.com. Follow YXE Underground on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, where you will see some photos of Bri and Jasmin taken by Saskatoon photographer Molly Shakowski. At the beginning of this episode, you heard Dax and Sarah Irons talk about the many ways Empty Arms helped them prepare for their son Everett's birth and grieve his passing. One of the items in the package Empty Arms prepared for them was a book entitled On the Night You Were Born by Nancy Tillman. Everett was born on September 27th, 2018, and every year on his birthday, Dax and Sarah read the book to their 2-year-old daughter. They also have tattoos based on the book's artwork, and I asked Dax if he could share the story behind his tattoo.
Yeah, I have 3 geese tattooed, and because there's a quote in the book that goes, so if ever you wonder just how special you are, and you wonder who loves you, how much and how far, just listen for geese flying high or honking high in the sky. They're singing a song to remember you by. And I just like the way that it looks like a young geese with his parents flying behind it. And I do now when I hear the geese, migrating every year when they're leaving or coming back, there's always that reminder. I remember very early on, actually, even before I got the tattoo, walking to work. I work at Innovation Place, and I used to walk across the train bridge every day. And I remember like having to stop and have a quick cry on the bridge because, it was probably, middle or end of October. And I just remember having that moment, hearing birds call, and it's nice knowing that I'll have that association with him forever. And it's because somebody had the forethought to put together a package like this, and like we didn't know at the moment, but that book now has given me something that I'll be able to reflect on with him forever.
One of the many things that amazes me about Jasmin and Bri's work with Empty Arms is the amount of careful thought that goes into the help and support they show families and individuals, and I think Dax's story proves that in spades. In the final part of our conversation, Jasmin and Bri explain how people connect with Empty Arms and the strong partnership they have formed with staff at the Jim Pattison Children's Hospital. I started by asking Bri if they were able to learn from other organizations when they started Empty Arms in 2015.
Well, there were sort of certain things that we knew we didn't want to do based on some other organizations. Like there were ones who offered, say, like just photography or just like care packages with no personal connection, right? Like they just sort of like leave them at the hospital and then the medical staff would like give them to families. And so not that either of those things are wrong, but it was just we knew that it was still not the level of connection and like comfort that we wanted to give these families.
Yeah, I really applaud that because and the fact too that you both have experienced loss as well, and yet like in your minds you knew what you wanted to do, like, and you just did it. Like, you did, and it's benefiting so many, it's helping so many people.
I mean, Jasmine's still like deep in the trenches. I have I don't even, it amazes me to think that like 7 years ago this didn't exist. And that now it's just, I can't imagine Saskatoon, like a family in Saskatoon going through a loss without this amazing resource that she still gives to all of our families. And obviously not just her, it's a whole organization, but like she's the driving force behind it from day one and still. So
Like 7 years going on 8 years, like do you ever take a moment, Jasmine, to step back and look at what Empty Arms has become?
Yeah, once in a while I think about it,
Yeah.
and it's it kind of blows my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear that you do reflect on it, though, because I can imagine that the work is so busy and emotionally very, like, you've got to give it everything. And so I'm glad to hear you find some time to reflect, because I imagine that's important.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think it kind of keeps me humble, too. I don't know. I think the reason I think I can keep doing it is because I focus on the fact that we're giving families little glimmers of light in the darkness, right? Like, because we're there and because they've made this connection, it's not all dismal. Like, they have some moments of light in the darkness. Yeah.
That was very nicely put. You mentioned earlier in terms of the community that forms, like when, like you said, there's glimmers of light in the darkness, and then when these families leave the hospital, they're not alone out there. Can you tell me a little bit, and both of you can talk about this, about the community that Empty Arms has helped create in these last 7-8 years?
Yeah, I mean, Jasmine will be able to speak more to, the people in it, but I just know that, like, where Jasmine and I met was in an online, it was a local, like, Facebook group, like, for, like, bereaved parents, but there were only, like, 30 of us or so, 30 or 40 at the time, and again, it was just a few mums who started it, and I remember just thinking, even though, like, to have that community, it was so small. I was like, really, this is all that it's happened to, like, so so when we, in our first year, I don't even remember, like, how it came about, but we knew we wanted to do a walk for like October's Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. So every year we do our perinatal awareness walk. And our first year, I remember when we were all organizing it, and I was like, is anybody going to show up? And it was like almost 100 people showed up even our first year. And now it's like we have like 500 people regularly attend plus every year, right? So, and it's overwhelming. Like now we have it as more of like a come and go just because there are so many people. So it's sort of like a whole day event. And it's just like throngs of people. It's a whole it's a whole subsect of our population here.
It's interesting too because when you first met on the online community, there was 30 or 40 people you said, and yet I'm sure deep down you knew there was more people out there, and yet that it's, as we've established here, it's for many people it's been hard to talk openly about that. But the fact that it's now an all-day event in the fall for you guys just shows, I think anyways, the community that you're helping to build. Does that make you feel good, Jasmine?
Yeah. It does. It does. I don't know. Like I said, it's just some days it's just kind of hard to wrap my head around that this is where we're at right now. Yeah.
I remember when we first started and we were troubleshooting how you asked how families find out about us and everything, right? And when we were troubleshooting how we would even raise awareness about our organization, because it's a brief window of time between when a family finds out that their baby has either passed or is terminal and when they meet them and leave them, right? So it's a very short window. So we quickly realized that getting hospital staff on board, even though we're a separate entity, right, was going to be a challenge, but key. And we're just so fortunate that our nursing staff here has just been our biggest advocates. They've been our biggest champions for the last 7-8 years. It's not even a question anymore, they just, if there's a patient with a loss, that one of their first questions, because I've been here for another birth, and I'll hear them has Empty Arms been contacted yet, and so, or have they been told about Empty Arms? So it's just, it's so, and the staff are so, I know they've told us how much they appreciate us, because their job is medical, they're making sure, as much as they are 100% absolutely compassionate and empathetic towards their patients, they're still focused on making sure that mom's not bleeding too much, or there's often other complications that come along with a pregnancy loss, right? So they're still very much engaged in the medical side of things, and so to have that part taken off their plates is, I know it's a big help to them too.
I just find that so interesting because, like you said, if you can get the buy-in at the level that the nurses are at working with families, that's huge.
We lucked out big time.
Yeah.
But I don't, just spending some time with you, I'm sure the nurses recognized the incredible, I was going to say service. It's not a service. The incredible, I don't know, the work that you do with these families, and hopefully they, my mom was a nurse, and I worked with nurses at Sherbrooke, and nurses are really smart. So I think they saw. I don't know if luck had anything to do with it, but I think they saw.
There was definitely relationship building in the first couple of years. There was a lot of meetings with management and meetings with the nurses and phone conversations and email conversations. So just sort of assuaging some of their fears and concerns, and talks about patient confidentiality and all of the logistics from their end, right? So, and just letting them know what we do and don't do. And I think one of the biggest hurdles was just reinforcing that we're not professionals in any capacity. We're peers, and we're not there to offer any sort of therapy or counseling or anything like that. This is just a peer support system, and that's that we're not stepping on any toes whatsoever. It's really to supplement the care that they're giving.
And obviously the relationship building you did with the staff here at the Children's Hospital has worked, and like, you've done an amazing job with it, because I recently saw on your Instagram feed that you have received another year of funding. Can you, Jasmine, can you explain a little bit about that? Because I think it speaks so highly about your organization.
Well, JPCH has a foundation, so they accept grant proposals for patient support every year, and usually it's from in-hospital staff, but outside organizations can apply too. So we applied, and they've given us some funding for the last 3 years for our in-hospital services. Yeah.
So how many families will you be able to help this year?
75. Yeah.
That's amazing. Congratulations. How does that make you guys feel?
Good. Really good. Yeah.
It's a huge relief for me because I used to do like almost all of the fundraising. That was one of my biggest, like, Jasmine was doing all of the like logistical. I mean, we've always had like a team of people helping us, but Jasmine and I were the sort of the constants from the beginning, and she was always doing the logistical and sort of the front end, back end stuff. And I always sort of felt like, because as I mentioned, I was doing fundraisers when we met, so I always sort of felt like, well, if we need money, I have to find it.
And I didn't know how to find it.
So
it's hard though, asking for money. It's hard. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I very quickly on I learned that I just had to swallow my pride and straight up ask, because we just couldn't do. I mean, we could give our time, but there was only so much. In the beginning, we were buying these supplies out of our pockets. We spent like years, huge financial deficits, both of our families, just to fund this organization and the startup, right? There was no startup funding.
At any point, like when you're funding this out of your own pockets, at any point did you say like, I don't know, like maybe this is as far as we can take it?
There were times I thought that. I remember getting to the point where like I can't support my family, without a paycheck, right? So, yeah.
Oh yeah, same. And so we've had different solutions to the same problem. So Empty Arms has enough money now, like has enough regular, grant and things to have a few, like full-time or like, not full, well, yeah, some full-time, but, like consistent, what's the word? No, like, just steady, like regular staff, like Jasmine's on staff now, right? So she's paid for all of this work that she's doing because she puts all of her hours in a day.
I'm glad you're getting paid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm grateful. It was hard back in the day, but I was so passionate. I didn't think about it till it was a huge problem within my family.
Yeah.
That I wasn't getting an income. So I'm grateful.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we are still small enough. We don't have enough funding for many employees. So I have now, that's why I'm more just in the role of volunteer photographer. And it's been hard, and it's been a long process of stepping back and sort of like giving up some of these roles because, our family also couldn't afford for me to work full time for free anymore. So now I'm doing my own work. That's my primary thing, and I'm really grateful to some other photographers for being able to step up and take on most of the work so that I can feed my family again. That's been great.
May I ask you both a personal question? You've touched on it a little bit in terms of like how much you put into this, and not just like today and last year, but like especially off the start too. Like do you ever get tired, like and in terms of like the fatigue? I sometimes ask this of social workers that I've interviewed on the podcast because, whether you're working at, a place like Prairie Harm Reduction or something like that, or out Saskatoon, and you give and you give and you give, and it's very clear that this means a lot to both of you, and you give and you give and you give. But do you have to be aware of, okay, maybe yeah.
Yeah, it's compassion fatigue's definitely a thing. That's why, like, for a lot of years, I was just doing the companioning in hospital, but now we have some casuals, so I have backups. So if I need a break, I call in somebody else who might be available to take over for a bit. So,
May I ask you, how do you know when you need a break?
good question. I don't know. Just feel tired.
Yeah.
It's just emotionally exhausting. Yeah.
How do you experience the compassion fatigue sometimes?
Oh yeah. It sort of all came to a head for me about a year and a half ago when I had another loss myself, and despite all of my experience and knowledge and everything, I was failed so entirely by our system again. It was really hard for me to come back from that and not feel like the weight of the unfairness of life, where this is what I've been doing for years, like giving all of my time serving these other families, and then when it happens to me, the system completely failed me. And so it was too much. That was when I got to the point where, and I don't know, which came first. Like, I don't know if the fatigue was there and then the miscarriage was sort of like the straw that broke the camel's back, or if the miscarriage happened and then I lost my, I guess, just threshold, like if my threshold was just lowered. But it was, prior to that, I hadn't really felt like a burnout. Like, I'd felt burnout with some of the, like I said, like the fundraising parts, like there's a whole like administrative nightmare there, but I'd never felt a burnout with the actual like work itself, like with serving the families. But after that, it just became, it definitely got harder for me. So that's, like I said earlier, I did end up having to step back a bit from attending as many as I was. So.
Thank you both for sharing that. You have both been very generous with your time, and you've been very, very open with me about the work that you do and how much it means to you. I want to end on a note where on your website there are a couple of testimonials, and there was one paragraph from a family that really stood out to me, and I think speaks to both of your characters. Do you mind if I just read it to you briefly? Okay. It's on your website, and the last paragraph of this testimonial says, "It has been the hardest year of my life. Continuing to live after handing a piece of my heart to someone else is the greatest heartache of all. The only good that came of losing our son was the people we've met. Jasmine and Bri gave us so much when we were losing everything. We felt so loved and supported." What goes through your mind when you hear that and when you read that?
I'm very grateful, again, that we could be that light for somebody. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, we've both said this, and so many families have said it to us. As much as, we would do anything to have our babies back, there has been so much good that has come because they're not here. And some of the people, like some of the best people I've ever met have been because of these babies. And so, yeah, like we really feel like the lucky ones. Like not everybody gets this kind of full circle, it's like closure almost every time we see these families getting the experience that we wish we had. Not every brave parent gets that closure and that
I don't think I ever expected to be in this good of a headspace after losing my daughter, like ever again. But like doing the work that I do just heals my heart a little bit more every time. Like I think we're really fortunate.
Yeah, like holding baby, like not many people get to hold or meet most of these babies, and it's just such a special moment that these families invite us into and allow us to share with them, and it's literally almost sacred, and there's no other way to describe it.
Thank you both for your time and for being so honest with me and for being so open as well. And thank you for the work that you do. And I know there are lots of people listening and there are lots of people in this community that will forever be grateful to you. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
My sincere thanks to Jasmine and Bri for appearing on the podcast, sharing so much of their personal stories, and for the work that they do in our community. If you want to learn more about Empty Arms and to donate to this wonderful nonprofit organization, visit emptyarmspls.com. This has been episode 5, season 5 of YXE Underground. My name is Eric Anderson. I host, produce, and edit this local independent podcast. You can listen to YXE Underground wherever you find your favorite podcasts, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, Good Pods, or the website yxeunderground.com. Feel free to leave a 5-star review if you like what you hear. Follow YXE Underground on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and that's where you will see some wonderful photos of Jasmine and Bri taken by Saskatoon photographer Molly Shakowski. A few quick thank yous before I say goodbye. Thank you to Saskatoon's Danger Dynamite for managing the website. Thank you to my cousin Andrew Dixon for the original theme music. And thank you to my friend Rob Romvey for supporting this episode of the podcast. Rob and his team at Romvey Wealth Management Group of RBC Dominion Securities in North Battleford have taken care of my finances for years, and they are just the best to work with. And Rob himself is so supportive of all things YXE Underground. Thank you so much, Rob. Before I go, I would like to acknowledge that these interviews were done on Treaty 6 territory and the traditional homeland of the Metis. My name is Eric Anderson. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon, Saskatoon.